Our friend Ryan Girdusky joins. He is the author of the National Populist Newsletter, which you can subscribe to on Substack. He's the founder of the 1776 Project PAC, master of election data, and quite a very nice fellow. Mr. Ryan Girdusky, how are you? Good to have you on.
Good. Thanks for having me.
All right, so I don't know if you've been hearing this at all. Of course, you listen to Clay and Buck Show every day, so you must have been hearing it. But let's
Every
just assume
day.
for a second, every day, all 3 hours.
Yeah.
The sense that Clay has, he is concerned. He is worried about this election. I am not worried. I am quietly confident. Should we be worried based on the numbers you are seeing now? And if so, why?
I mean, look, it's Republicans are dealing with a whiplash right now. 2.5 weeks ago, Republicans had a real chance at winning New Jersey, and now they're in competition in Georgia again. So we are in a position that we are not as comfortable as we certainly were under Biden right before he dropped out. However, Donald Trump is still polling better than he ever did at any time he's ever run for office, aside from the last month with Joe Biden. He is certainly polling better than he did in 2020, certainly better than he did in 2016. I'll break it down by the few polls that have come out in the last couple of weeks. This is according to Voter Hub. Harris right now has, on the last three polls in Pennsylvania, Harris has a 0.6% lead to a 0.1% lead, depending on how many polls you count. Michigan, Harris's lead is 0.27. In Wisconsin, it's 1.2. And in Nevada, it's 0.8. In North Carolina, Trump leads by 2. Georgia, Trump leads by 0.6. And in Arizona, Trump leads by 1.2. Now, with the exception of just Georgia, all of these numbers are still better than where he was in 2020 and in 2016 in all of these states. And I will say that a lot of what we're seeing as far as a Harris surge go is not a lot of people dropping from the Trump train and going over to Harris. It's disenfranchised Democrats, especially a lot of minorities and young people who did not like Joe Biden but are comfortable voting for Kamala Harris. That is the Kamala Harris surge. There is a ceiling to that surge. It's not a never-ending growth that has no limitation to it. And it is a bit of a sugar high. I have never seen in my life someone surge 10 points with favorability and managed to keep it. I mean, she surged 10 points overnight and managed to keep it for very long. She hasn't opened her mouth up. Her running mate is a lunatic, an absolute far left fringe nutbag. So there is definitely going to be some recourse over time. It's just, is there enough time to get where there needs to be? That's the big question.
How is it looking right now well, actually there's two parts to this. One is how's it looking right now in Pennsylvania for Trump? And the second part is Pennsylvania basically do or die for both candidates?
I don't see a way that Harris can win without PA. There is a path to Trump if he loses PA. He can win Wisconsin, win Arizona, win Georgia, win North Carolina, and win. Harris cannot win without Pennsylvania. There's no path for her without Pennsylvania. And I will remind people, I mean, Pennsylvania has the more accurate polling as far as Rust Belt states go. It's certainly easier to poll because they do register voters by party, not by self-identification in the polls, unlike Michigan and Wisconsin, where you just register to vote and you're a registered voter and you decide if you're a Republican or Democrat when you go vote in primaries. In PA, you have to vote with a party and you have to stick to the party, and you can only vote in the party's primaries. So it's a little easier to find where voters are in Pennsylvania. Listen, Pennsylvania is extremely, extremely, extremely important. There's no other way to say it. There are certain factors working against Trump. Mainly, one, the areas of the collar counties around Philadelphia have definitely grown in population. They're more liberal than they used to be, and the rural counties have been emptying out over the last several decades, including the 4 years since Trump last ran and 8 years since he won the state. But Republican registration is up. In a lot of the cities where Trump saw immense gains from 2016 to 2020, cities like Reading, Lancaster proper city, even Philadelphia, because of a surge of a Hispanic and Asian population. That population has continued to grow, and Trump's support within that population has continued to grow. You'll see precincts, if you look at precinct changes from 2016 to 2020, where there were precincts that Trump got 3%, 5% the first time in 2016, where he got 22, 23, 24% the second time. That will help offset some of the suburban trends away from Trump.
Speaking of Ryan Girdusky, National Populist Newsletter is his on Substack. Highly recommend you subscribe. I'm a subscriber. I read it every week. Ryan, now let's look at the demographics that could determine this election. And let's start with one that I know you've done a lot of number crunching on: white working class voters, white male working class voters in the Rust Belt. Are they likely to be definitive? Are they likely to just be a big piece of a larger pie? I mean, what do you make of their role in this?
So let's say making a Republican a president, winning a Republican presidential candidacy is like making a cake. If that was the analogy I'm using, white working class men are the batter. You cannot make a cake without the batter. It is impossible. And it's not a question of are they going to support Trump? They overwhelmingly are. Maybe a third might vote for Kamala, but maybe even less than that, maybe even a quarter. It's a matter of turnout. Whites without a college degree have the history of the worst voter turnout of any group among blacks, college-educated whites, and non-college educated whites. They turn out the least. Only his recent immigrants, like Hispanics, turn out less than they do. That is the most important game, is if they can sit there and they can actually show up in big numbers. If they can, then the election is definitely going to go to one way, which will go to Trump. And there are more of them. I mean, there's a wild fascination and this this fever dream among a lot of Republican donors that they're going to win 25% of the black vote, 30% of the black vote, something like that. For every 1% of the black vote that they hope to gain, it would be the equivalent of, if they gain 1% more with the white vote, it would be like gaining 5 points with the black vote. And they are much more important in the more important states: Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, a lot of retirees, all those positions, or North Carolina. Winning those voters and winning the low-hanging fruit is much easier, and it's much more important. But it's a persuasion thing. It's a turnout game, and I think that's really where the election is won or lost, and it's primarily won or lost in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania.
You might have seen, Ryan, there's some back and forth chatter on X now over whether the Trump ground game in the key states, and specifically to do the turnout operations that you were just talking about for non-college educated white voters, is strong enough. Do you have a view on that? Do you have some insight into how Trump seems to be doing? And then just also, what does a really strong ground game for those voters look like?
Well, I think that what I would like to see more. I've heard that good things about the turnout, about the ground game, but I don't know enough. So I'm not going to sit there and delve into what it is. But what I would like to see more is more coalitions building. So a coalition and we can talk about racial coalitions the way that Harris does, or we can talk about economic coalitions. There is a substantial amount of people in this country, for example, who live in motorhomes, who live in motorhome communities. Especially, ironically, they live primarily in swing states. I think it's almost 20 million live primarily in swing states: Arizona, Georgia, Florida used to be a swing state, but Florida, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. One of their big issues is they don't own the land that they have their mobile home on. And a lot of times corporations and big hedge funds buy the land and price them out, and they become homeless. This is a big conversation happening within microcosms of this country. Targeting people like that, targeting people within certain unions, which the Trump campaign has done very successfully, as well as going after not only simply just minorities or white people, whatever, but targeting within white voters certain ethnic coalitions. Talking about Christopher Columbus statues is extremely important with Italian Americans. There's certain things with Eastern European Americans which make up huge percentages of Pennsylvania. And talking about those kinds of conversations specifically with white voters I think is very, very important. There's also conversations that we had generationally. I think JD Vance being a millennial is very important. People who are millennials, we went through a different upbringing than other generations. We had a very hard time. We had the Iraq War, we had the 2008 recession, we had the dot-com bubble. There was a lot of things in when we were going into both high schools and college and post-college careers that held a lot of millennials back from owning a home, from starting their life earlier on, and a lot of student debt. Those kinds of conversations he is unique to have because he had that experience. Waltz didn't, Harris didn't, even Trump didn't, because they're just of a certain age. I think JD Vance could speak to those voters, and speak to those voters, especially in the Midwest and in the Sun Belt.
You touched on this, Ryan, but I wanted to just have you get into it a little bit more. I mean, I like the way you said it, that Walz is a lunatic. Is it clear in your mind already, based on the reaction to Walz as the pick, as well as how the numbers have moved, that this was a mistake, that is just Kamala making a bad decision? Or do you feel like they can still turn this into Walz appealing to those white working class voters in the swing states to maybe peel some off from Trump? Not that many, but enough that it could be the difference in Wisconsin or Michigan.
Well, it might be the difference, but since Walz became governor, 50,000 people in Minnesota moved to Wisconsin. So a lot of people know who Walz is and decided to leave. I think that should be exacerbated and delved into as to who are these people and why do they leave. If they left because they hate Walz, make sure they're going to go vote in Wisconsin. And that's as of 2022. I'm sure in 2023 and 2024, that number is actually even higher. That's one thing. But also, Walz's essential problem is he chases the most fringe, lunatic elements of the internet. And that's where he finds his base. Defunding ICE, he marched in their things. Tampons in boys' bathrooms. His wife saying that she likes the smell of burning cities. These are the whole BLM, everything BLM was completely lunatic, fringe ideas, and he embraced every single one of them. He chased the internet crowd wherever they went. He hosted someone some imam who did pro-Hitler movies and celebrated the October 7th massacres at the governor's mansion in Minnesota. He is the most fringe person. On the outside, he looks like he could be every Midwesterner's dad, but on the inside, if he was on MSNBC, Rachel Maddow would tell him to calm down. That's how crazy this man actually is. And I think that needs to be exposed. Is don't buy the wrapping on the package. What's inside the package is actually horrendous for you, and you wouldn't want it if you were given as a gift.
Do you buy the New York Times reporting that it really did just come down, the VP pick came down to who Kamala liked, and it was her, they let it be her decision? Or was it really just mostly anti-Semitism? You can't have Shapiro, even though he'd probably help you win Pennsylvania.
I probably would guess the first part, that it was really who Harris liked. I think that she probably really Harris has dreamed of this moment for a very, very long time, and she probably wanted somebody who would always play second fiddle to her. Josh Shapiro probably wouldn't. I don't know why they didn't pick Mark Kelly. Maybe it just didn't go well, but Shapiro is very, very ambitious. He wants to be president. He's trying to make himself in the image of a Jewish Obama, and I think that it would have been a lot of competition, and it would have been a lot of anger. If Democrats were truly serious, though, about her chances, if there were a lot of Democrats, you would have saw Gretchen Whitmer and Newsom and Pritzker really throw their hat in the ring. I think a lot of Democrats are pessimistic about if she can win, because if she does win, right, no matter if she wins a second term or not, Democrats are out. A lot of these leading Democrats for the future are out of the running until 2032. A lot of them will have retired. Their whole chance of being president will be over. So I think internally, a lot of, and in their back of their minds, someone who's like Gretchen Whitmer, obviously been trying to groom herself for the job, trying to make herself a national figure, trying to build a fundraising base, is probably thinking to herself, yeah, I could see Kamala losing, but that's okay because I could still run. If Kamala wins, she's never running for president. Neither is Newsom, neither is Pritzker, neither is Shapiro. They'll all be term limited out and be out of office by that point.
If forced to put your last dollar on a Trump victory or a Kamala victory, Ryan, don't worry. We'll only play this back after the election if you're right. Who wins the election?
We've done this so many times now. Yeah, I think right now Trump's still going to win. I still think that he has the win in his back. I still think Yeah, I still think he's going to win because this is my reasoning, my rationale for it. One, I do think that there's an internal bias among voters for female candidates for president. That's politically incorrect, but I do believe that's true. Secondly, Harris, I mean, she went from being the character on Veep to being like this cool woman who just is, it's very bizarre. I don't believe that the hype is true from the internet. And then lastly, Trump has always overperformed polls in the Rust Belt. I think he will do it again. I fundamentally do. Back in 2020, he was down 6 points in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Right now, he is down between 0.1 to 2.7 in those three states. I do think he can overperform in the end. And like I said before, the support he hasn't been losing support. It's just disenfranchised Democrats have been building towards Harris, but I think that support is there for him too. He just needs to really, really double down on the white working class of the Midwest and speak to those voters.
I've been saying the same thing. I totally agree. I've been looking at those numbers and it all makes sense to me. Ryan Girdusky, everybody, subscribe to the National Populist newsletter and check out the 1776 Project PAC. Ryan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know, it's common for people to feel what they can think of as a, quote, heart symptom, right? I mean, heart palpitations, for example, fluttering, that feeling your heart might be skipping a beat. These could be nothing, but what if they're not? I mean, how do you self-check yourself between visits to the doctor? Well, here's an idea, something that I've done for my dad. Equip yourself with a KardioMobile 6L. This is a pocket-sized device that connects to your smartphone. You can get a read on your heart in a matter of seconds. You can also send that data immediately to your doctor. The KardioMobile 6L is an FDA-cleared device that has 6 times the data of any smartwatch. It can also detect AFib, the leading cause of stroke. It can tell if your heart rhythm is normal or not. The team in New York just got one for the studio since it's pretty intense there on a breaking news day, but my dad's got one at home, and I know he's so calm knowing that he can check things out when he needs to. The KardioMobile 6L is a $129 value, but for a limited time, KardioMobile is giving 20% off. Go to Kardia.com. That's Kardia.com. Or you can go to Amazon. Just type in Kardia, Kardia. Either way, use Clay's name as your promo code, 2024 Clay. So that's Kardia.com or Kardia on Amazon. 2024 Clay is your promo code for 20% off.